It is 7:05 p.m., June 6th, 2023. We'll call to order this regular meeting of the Reading Board of Education. Present in person are all members except John Shanahan, who is joining us remotely via Zoom. First item of business is the consent agenda, which consists of the minutes of the May 2nd and May 23rd regular meetings. Are there any questions or comments first on the May 2nd meeting minutes? I would just note for clarification under Educational Spaces Modernization Project Update, I believe the gentleman's name is Justin Hopkins, not Justin Popkins. And Fire Marshal is 1 L, not 2 L's. But otherwise, no other comments.
I'll make note.
Thank you. Any questions, comments on the May 23rd meeting minutes, the joint meeting with Easton and Region 9? I would note on page 4 of the minutes where it refers to members serving on a search committee for director of special education position. I would prefer if that said serve on an interview panel, because we had not formed a committee and they're not a formal committee to do that. And on page 6 of those minutes, the motion with respect to Chartwells, the motion that I recall was to exercise the option to extend the contract, or really to exercise the option to renew the contract is what I recall the motion being, not to simply extend the contract. So that would apply to all 3 motions. And finally, there's a reference to me reading a prepared statement. I didn't read a prepared statement, it was just remarks.
On page 4, it says a committee will be formed for regionalization research. That we're not actually forming a committee, are we?
No, where does it say that?
The bottom of page 4.
I see it was decided that the research would be needed and then a committee could be formed,
Oh, okay.
which I think is fair. Any other comments on the minutes? If there aren't, I'll look for a motion to adopt those minutes with the proposed corrections, starting with May 2nd. John, second. Shrug. Any discussion? All right, calling the question, Mr. Shanahan, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yeah, they're in Italy. They're on the
I can hear you. Yes.
John?
literally
Not working. Mic not working.
John, try.
Hello. That's the microphone.
Can you hear us now?
I mean, they got it.
Try again, John.
Oh, sorry, everybody.
Did you hear the motion with respect to approval of the May 2nd minutes? He's gone. All right. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Shanahan temporarily absent. Look at the same motion with respect to May 23rd minutes. John, second. Shrug again. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Mr. Shanahan is still not back in the Zoom. That brings us to item 3 on the agenda, which is public comment and members of the public wishing to be heard. Seeing none, move on to board member comment. Moving right along, administrative reports, Dr. Smith.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you all. We're going to start with Melissa with a principal's report from RES.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Wow, May and June has been a tremendously busy month at RES. It is definitely that time of year. I will share, I think I shared at a previous board meeting regarding the Lonestown Marsh. Classrooms have been utilizing the marsh, so that's been really exciting to see all of our students going over there, whether they're writing or studying or looking at plant life. It is definitely being utilized by the RES community. I also shared last month that we were planning our Reading, this 4-day Reading field trip. Huge shout out to Melissa Null, our math specialist, and also Mr. Farina, our advanced learning opportunities teacher, for all of their art organization and hard work in planning that field trip. It was a 2-day experience and it was enjoyed by all. We recently just wrapped up all of our spring concerts. So we did have our concert recently at John Reed Middle School to try to accommodate more families. We did still have to limit some of our families because we did have 110 performers. So it was a little tricky, but we were glad to have the additional space. We've had author visits. Helen Lester and her husband, Robin Lester, recently visited us in May. It was really fun. They did a fabulous job. She was truly inspirational. She is kind of, I went up to her and I met her and I was like, I want to be you when I grow up, because she was just so full of energy, so full of life, and the kids really enjoyed her. We had our kindergarten orientation on May 26th, where all the kindergartners got to check out the K wing. Tomorrow, we actually have our K readiness, where we invite families in. We had our last full school assembly, which we now call our Rocky Rallies, to kick off. We said goodbye to our fourth graders. Fourth grade student council also gave advice to our students who will remain at RAS. We had our art show on June 1st, which was fabulous. One of the parents called it magical, and it definitely was. We are in the midst of our 12 days until summer countdown. Today was Surfer Day, hence the delay. And I have to acknowledge, we recently had the nominations for Teacher of the Year, for RAS Teacher of the Year and RAS Staff Member of the Year. And I am super excited to announce that Erica Ambrosio, one of our third grade teachers, has been honored with RAS Teacher of the Year, and Rachel Saluzzi, who works in the main office, has been honored with Staff Member of the Year for RAS. And kindergarten count up till was 94, so we will be having that 6th section.
And 6 sections with 94 keeps class size the same year over year, basically.
Yeah, it would be around, it will be on the 15 to 18 mark. Yeah. Any questions?
Okay.
Yeah, and RES PTA takeover of Quasi.
Oh, I heard it was great.
I had nothing but good feedback from everybody. I took 9 people myself. It was great.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad the weather too, like, cooperated, because that was a little bit crazy during dismissal.
Okay, thank you.
And then Melissa, the murals that we talked about a few months ago, it sounds like they've been painted or almost done.
Yeah, so I shared some photos. Yes, they're getting sealed, I believe, next weekend. They are absolutely stunning. It's really exciting to see kids come outside and they're like, whoa, especially after this past weekend, because we had a lot of parent volunteers and the artists. She did a really great job allowing, you didn't really even have to be an artist to support. It was almost like paint by number, some of the flowers and things. She also included the new Rocky logo, which I shared today with all staff, that it was the Rocky with the tree, the R that we initially had shared. But ultimately, we really like both logos for different purposes. So I don't know if you've seen the 4th grade moving up signs that have been in lawns. So 4th graders have been putting these lawn signs, which has the RAS Rocky logo. So we're using them kind of interchangeably, which has been fun.
So, Lake Quassapag fanaticism, I guess it entered this building too, because we heard a lot about it, and I felt like I was back home again. I grew up in Hillsbury. So it's busy, and there has been a lot going on at John Reed Middle School, and we've had several guest speakers come into the building, and we want to extend thanks to Mr. Rob Kamba. Came in and spoke to our 7th graders in their World Studies class about genocide in Africa. And we also had Mr. Sarkany come in and speak to our 6th graders who are in World Studies, who are studying the Holocaust as part of their World Studies 6th grade program. Can't say enough about the students and how they listened and how they asked questions, and the impact the speakers had on them. So afterwards, in the hallways, they continue to speak about what they heard. And it's just very, very powerful. Mr. Sarkany is a survivor of the war in Europe. So as we said to those students, that's truly a gift. That generation is not going to be with us much longer. And he was a bundle of energy. And he drove here from just outside of Hartford. So he said, God willing, I'll be back next year. The 8th grade transition to Barlow. So we had the administrators from Joel Barlow come in and speak to parents. So we had about 11 parents come in for coffee. We had extra coffee, plenty of coffee cake that was made by JT Shem, who was one of the assistant principals. JT is well known for his baking skills. And it was a nice discussion of back and forth, just to reassure parents about the transition moving forward. And tomorrow, our 8th graders will be going over to Barlow in the morning to run through some activities with student leaders, hear from seniors, get some advice, and learn how to navigate the server in action. And I can tell you from experience, that usually is one of their greatest concerns is, hey, how do I actually navigate those lines? So they'll know that going in. Our music groups went to lake compounds. We can't have one lake play off of another. And they competed in an adjudicated competition, receiving excellent and superior range scores for their performances. And we're very proud of them as well. Next year, we're going to be starting a wingman group. We're winging it up again. We did have wingman in the past, and applications have gone out to 6th and 7th grade students. And we just like to extend thanks to a couple of Barlow students who've been coming over every Wednesday to help with homework club. So Wesley Nichols, and Ava Kulikowski come and really help students with anything, but we ask them to help with math and do that. They show up every single time. They have a group of students around them. And our 5th graders have been they went to a Putnam Park for their field trip, and tomorrow they are going to the Mark Twain Library. So it's going to be a busy day around here tomorrow, but the kids are just doing a great job. We have 2 announcements to make regarding the John Reed Teacher of the Year. And our Teacher of the Year is Danielle Lingo. And our Staff Member of the Year is Mary Urban. And Mary Urban will be retiring as well. So I just wanted to read a little something about Mary Urban, who's a paraprofessional. So Mary Urban, I've had the pleasure of let me get to the right one. Hold on, I look on the wrong page. I did a lot of reading today. Mary Urban has dedicated more than 20 years to helping students of Reading. She gives her time, her compassion, and her love. She not only gives to our students, but her intuitive nature lends itself to making sure that all students and staff in our building are cared for, understood, and are receiving what they need. Mary does not shy away from advocating for students. It would not be out of the ordinary for Mary to come to me with questions about a student and suggest that we take a deeper look. She notices. She takes time to notice when a child doesn't have what they need for class, and when their backpack is broken, and when they have worn the same clothes for a few days in a row. She notices when colleagues seem stressed, and when someone is walking with a limp, or when someone is a little more quiet than normal. But Mary doesn't just notice, she does something about it. She lends a hand, she asks questions, she offers help. Mary doesn't sit on the sidelines and wait to be asked. She just does. And I'm sure she will be still doing as she moves into retirement. So.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions?
I came from a HOSA visit in 7th grade classrooms, and it was really, really incredible. So we're really fortunate that he's willing to share our story. It's so great for their kids to hear that.
Yeah, and it builds resilience, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, these are horrible circumstances that people were in. But through those stories, we hope students realize, hey, if I don't do well on this,
Yeah,
You know what? I have skills too.
yeah, no, it was,
I,
I cried. It's really, really moving.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you. Mrs. Sarah Stefani is going to help us with an agenda item for our end of year finances. So you've got to have an update. Quickly.
Yeah. So first, I'm really excited to share with you a new program that we're going to have in place with our 8th graders. My report provides a little bit of context about this. The personal interest project grew out of our really long-term interest in providing greater student voice in the work that they do, creating authentic experiences for them. And this has been tried in a lot of different forms with performance-based projects, with passion projects that teachers would create in the classroom. So based on the feedback that we also heard from high school students saying, through all of my years, these are the things that we did, this is what was meaningful, but this is what could have been better. And they said, you know, we wish that we had more of an opportunity to create, to have more of a choice when we were doing research. We wish that the project at Barlow maybe happened a little bit earlier in our educational experience. And so we made this a part of our strategic work. This is a part of the strategic plan. And then as we were building our budget and creating plans for next year, we partnered with EdAdvance, and we'll be working with EdAdvance, which is one of the Connecticut RESCs, to develop the 8th grade, it's called PIP, Personal Interest Project, in both of our middle schools. It's going to be rolled out a little bit differently, as you can see from the description, but the projects will give students in a very structured way an opportunity to determine, take their personal interest, determine an area of focus, basically write a proposal to do their research, go through a process of research where the library media specialists in both middle schools will assist the students in doing that. Hopefully the kids will have some mentorship, whether that's within the building or outside of the building. And ultimately they will create their research, conduct their research, engage in self-reflection, and then develop a project. So the project could take lots of different forms. From what I was able to learn from past projects through EdAdvance, I saw one student who learned about American Sign Language, who also had an interest in children's literature, and he created a version of Goodnight Moon using American Sign Language. Another project that had to do with wilderness survival, another project that had to do with archery. So there's a definite hands-on element. And then there's a tech-based digital component. So the students ultimately put their projects together, and then they have to present it in a manner that uses multimedia. So through the EdAdvance collaboration, a coach will also come and work with our teachers, work with our library media specialists to develop the projects as they go through. And then over the course of next year, I will work with our building principal to determine sort of the best way to include this project moving forward. Here at John Reed, the students will probably have a little bit more time than the kids at Helen Keller, because this will be part of their fine and practical arts rotation. So they'll really have a good amount of content time to dig in. So we're excited to get into that and then share the progress with you. The other aspects of our report, as you can see, we continue to wait for information from the state regarding the reading waiver request, but we have made the decision to pilot one program, CKLA, in grades K through 4, with some 5th grade teachers dabbling as well. And the information that's gained through that pilot will help to inform any type of budget proposal. You can see I'm looking at some different bands. The state mandate is K through 3, but given the layout of our schools, we'll need to really gather information, and based on how much of a departure the program is from what we're currently doing, make a decision that's right for our students. So do we want the students to have one thing in K3, something else in 4-5, and then something else in 6-8? And so you'll hear more about that progress next fall as we begin the pilot. And the final part of my report may require some board action, and that has to do with the exciting work we've been doing this year related to teacher and leader evaluation. We have been working with an outside consultant by the name of Patrick Flynn to take a good look first at our current evaluation plan, but more so the research that has to do with effective feedback and evaluation models. And he has been involved with many, many districts in Connecticut and also in other states, and has also worked with the state. So he's well aware of kind of what's on the horizon in terms of future state guidelines, even though they haven't been released yet. And so what we're looking forward to doing next year is piloting an evaluation plan in a very low stakes manner. We want to bring our teachers into a process where they are given much more feedback, but the feedback is not necessarily evaluative in nature. There will still be an evaluation component, but because we want people to become more open to having people visit their classrooms, open to having people affirm good practice, raise questions about their instructional practice, and ultimately grow as teachers in service to student growth. We're looking forward to this pilot because the pilot will create the culture. And without those sort of cultural conditions for adult learning, the high stakes type of evaluation that the state model has had in place for so many years related to Race at the Top is very likely to help teachers make gains. So there have been a number of research studies related to when you give teachers an algorithmic calculation of their effectiveness, it is actually not very likely to lead to great changes. Right? So we know that effective feedback is likely to lead to changes when people are engaged and when there's a sort of collective efficacy around it. So this has some information about what we're hoping to do next year. The state has provided flexibility in teacher evaluation since the pandemic. So in the year 2019, 2020, we know we had no evaluation whatsoever. And for the years following, they have allowed us flexibility. We only took advantage of the flexibility for 1 year, and then we went back to our traditional plan. For a number of reasons, but one of the key reasons was because we wanted our newest teachers to have the benefit of having formal feedback. And we were worried that during the time of the pandemic, when learning was so atypical, our brand new teachers weren't getting a whole lot of feedback about their craft. And so next year, this would be going back to flexibility, but the flexibility would not be, we're just not going to follow the state's model. Flexibility would be, we're going to work closely with this consultant. All of our administrators and evaluators will get trained in developing this new type of feedback. And then that's what we would implement next year. And the main difference is that we simply won't be providing that number rating for teachers at the end of the year. Questions about that?
Not about this, but about the math program.
Yeah.
We talked a couple months ago about scheduling the professional development before the summer. Were you able to do that?
Oh, yes, it happened in May.
Oh,
So the teachers, actually, the middle school teachers spent a full day. So we had half of the day that was provided by Desmos, that was the orientation. And then I scheduled the other half of the day so that the teachers could really dig into the first couple of units of Desmos and feel acquainted and prepared. Additionally, they will spend, they have an opportunity to sign up for 1 day in the summer to continue working with the new materials. Yeah.
Question about the evaluation plan. My recollection is that we have a waiver from the state because we sort of built our own
Yes.
internal evaluation. How does the new state guidelines intersect with our homegrown evaluation model?
We don't have new guidelines yet. So
Well, how do we expect that?
how do we expect them to? We expect them to align very nicely with the model we're developing. So the new state guidelines, from what we understand, will provide many more opportunities for us to provide differentiated types of feedback to teachers. So not necessarily a locked kind of tenured teachers get this, non-tenured teachers get that. And it will provide more flexibility with respect to kind of the algorithm calculation of effectiveness. So that's what we understand. There's a lot of talk about what those guidelines will include, and the latest update to the superintendents in Connecticut came on May 18th. And what they're saying is that they hope to release the guidelines over the summer And that would allow Connecticut districts the full year to acquaint themselves with the guidelines. We feel like we're kind of one step ahead because we started at the beginning of this year. And really getting into the research. And so that way, next year, as we're piloting, what I'm expecting, and this is really what I'm expecting, because we know a lot about the guidelines, even though they haven't been released, is that those guidelines will confirm what we are already piloting, and then the work will be complete to take that and turn it into a written plan. And then that plan will be submitted to the state in late spring. I'm assuming that's the expectation from the state to be in place formally in 24-25.
So one way that we have to change our plan.
One way or another, we do. And you know, you're absolutely right. So we do have a way of doing state. Ours has always been more holistic, but it took a lot of hoops for, at that time, Josephsburg and I to get it approved by the state. So, I mean, a key thing for us was that we really wanted to maintain the vision of learning, sort of the important reflective learning environments that we have for students and adults. And that it's not, we don't want to overspend, but that.
Then I have a question on the PIP project, whatever the right
Yes.
verb is. I recall in the past, we've had in the middle school, Genius Time and Tip Cart projects and other things that are sort of cousins of what we're proposing here. And they've all kind of fallen off the wayside for a variety of reasons. I think, for some students, they were sort of a waste of time and energy because nothing really got developed along the lines of what's here. What is the plan for ensuring sort of staff buy-in and sort of fidelity to this idea? Because I think the idea at its core is good. I just don't want it to sort of suffer the same fate as prior efforts.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, I think that those efforts were all grounded in great purpose. They might have lacked adequate professional development prior, and then adequate oversight during, so that the students were allowed to choose something to do, and perhaps there wasn't enough thought into exactly how that was going to be monitored, what self-reflection would include, how it would be assessed. And so I think the partnership with Ed Advance will allow us to benefit from their experience doing this work. So there is a whole part of Ed Advance that, we're assigned a coach, and this is what he does all the time. He goes out to schools and he develops these projects. My hope is that over the course of next year, we would be able to then internalize that process and then be able to sustain it without the support of an external coach.
Those type of ideas that you talked about, Chris, suffer from implementation difficulties.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Ed Advance does really well is provide you a framework and a set of tools that teachers can use throughout the year that help scaffold these projects from development all the way implementation and eventually delivery.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that I'm keenly interested in is how we could take really any student idea and be sure that it's connecting back to the mastery of standards. So any one of these projects, in terms of the research process, in terms of the reading skills, in terms of the writing skills, all of that should map back to the standards. And I would like to be able to look at it through that lens as well. So even though I might be interested in archery and Sarah's interested in art, I can go back and say, both of those things are of equal value, and this is how we are also working towards mastery of common standards.
The idea is that it's a semester course here that's taught by the library specialist.
Semester.
Oh, it is a semester.
But it's going every other day, so it's really a quarter course going out into a semester, overseen by our librarian and Rebecca Richards.
So half the eighth grade will take it in the fall and the other half will take it.
Yes, and we're hoping to confirm the professional development for the teachers overseeing in August.
And my dream is to have mentors, community mentors, to use the assets that have been part of Palooza and have them come in and help mentor our students as well.
I don't get the sense a lot of people in the community know about the community asset network generally, so it's an opportunity to,
Growing.
yeah.
And the only other question I had is, what have you done in the past when PDAC has made a recommendation to make a change to the evaluation process has the board voted to accept,
Yeah,
bless,
the board,
accept the recommendation of PDAC, and there's kind of a mechanism and a step that takes place between the state approving it. The state only approves it when you follow certain criteria, and a PDAC makes a recommendation. Sometimes it requires board approval, sometimes it doesn't, so I'm curious.
yeah, so in my memory, this, the boards only approved when it was the first plan that we submitted. We never made what the state would consider substantial revisions that would require future approval by anyone, right?
Right,
We
that
made
sounds right.
some minor changes. The flexibilities that were afforded to us by the state during the pandemic, I don't recall being approved or accepted by the board. We informed you all,
Right.
but I don't recall.
Those were different times.
So we have one more meeting left at the end of June. This is something we may have to research and contact Sharon.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It sounds like this isn't an immediate move for next year. This is piloting an approach for next year.
piloting.
Before, I don't think we need board approval to pilot something, but once the PDEC has a recommendation for what to apply to the state to do, then it seems like that might be government.
Yeah, I mean, the documentation that we have from the state at this time is that it does say LEAs must choose to adopt these flexibilities, must do so through the mutual agreement process of the PDEC and the local board of education. So it does say that, and so it's up to you, whether you want to take action, put it on hold.
Well, research it.
You'll next have it.
And in 3 weeks, we can.
Yeah, we'll get a read on that and come back to you. All right, any other questions for Deputy?
Yeah, I had a question about Desmos. I just happened to look online a little bit about it. Is it all online for the kids?
It's not. There is definitely a digital platform and a dashboard, but there are, there's a workbook for students in all grades, and then there's also the ability for teachers to download and print out any of the lessons. So the teacher has the ability to determine which lessons to do interactively using Chromebooks, using the interactive whiteboard, and which ones to do sort of in a paper pencil manner.
The workbooks are optional. We did it this year.
We purchased them this year, and then we decided that that's what's written into our contract, and what we decided was that in future years, we could decide whether we want to purchase the workbooks or not.
Dr. McKinnon and team brings us to discussion and possible action, educational spaces modernization project update. Dr. McKinnon.
Yes, I do have an update.
Well, you're voting that since the last time we met, we had authorized an RFP for the RES project subject to approval. We got that financial approval, I think, during the meeting. And also the same with respect to John Reed. The town through ARPA has allocated $14,000 to the John Reed project, which is less than 10% of the total cost. So.
So if you recall, the two projects for RES and John Reed kind of divided into two. The main improvement at Reading Elementary School was the enhancements of the enhancement of the kindergarten hallway, cleaning up the furniture, the storage options, installing walls along the kindergarten hallway, installing doors, adding windows, and making those 3 storage rooms into small construction rooms. So part of that is obviously construction, and the other component of that is buying the lockers and the furniture to make that a reality. You approved that we put an RFP in the field on May 10th, 2023. And the results of the RFP were due last Friday. Unfortunately, we did not get any bidders on the project. So, we had a plan B, which was to go through the easy IQC process in Connecticut. And that essentially allows us to find qualified contractors because they're on a state bid list for certain projects. And so, we developed an account. We went through Gordian, which is the account manager of this process. And I can show you the Connecticut. That essentially Connecticut is divided into 4 zones, and the construction company related to our particular area, which is area 3, is BMP. Is that correct, Sarah? BMP. Oh, there we go, BMP. Yeah. So we actually met with BMP today, and we walked them through the Reading Elementary School and showed them this is the construction, the type of work that we're looking at doing. And Sarah provided an update to us that we should have concrete numbers by the end of this week, after that construction company seeing exactly what we wanted to do with the walls, doors, and including the millwork upstairs for the first and second grade area. We also had a meeting today with a furniture vendor that worked with Tecton to identify the different types of cubbies and furniture that we would be using in the space. And we should have concrete numbers by the end of the week. So, not sorry, excuse me, we have concrete numbers, but looking at a timeline and when those furniture pieces can be purchased and installed. So we're looking to get invoices from what's the name of the company again? Meteor Education.
Senior education, yeah.
Okay. So BMP looking to provide some concrete quotes by the end of the week concerning the construction. Meteor Education is going to build off the work that we did with Tecton, identifying furniture and coming up with a price list and looking at lead time and when the availability of the furniture is. We were a little bit delayed because we put the RFP in place. Unfortunately, the RFP was not successful in terms of getting bidders. So one of the things we need to talk about is, are we comfortable with the easy ICQ process and the way in which we get certified qualified bidders to do construction projects in Connecticut. And like I said, we should have numbers by the end of the week for that project.
I'm assuming they've been vetted and all that from the state, right?
They are vetted. They've done projects in schools in the past. And Gordian is actually being used at the high school to do some projects.
When you put RFPs out, where do you post it?
We're required by policy to post it in local newspapers, which we did. And we also added a feature last year where we added into a state organization that kind of puts it out statewide. So, you know, when we did this last year for the bid for the architect firm, I think we got 9 or 10 bidders using the exact same process.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, who gets this?
Well, it's the web portal that most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the Department of Administrative Services portal for the state that goes out to.
And contractors check it every day.
Oh, yeah.
Did BMP say that, they're available to do this? I know they're working on hard numbers, but do they have availability to actually do the project?
They have some concerns about the timeline, and we should know more by the end of the week whether certainly price and also availability. So that is timeline is also a crunch.
On the assumption that it can be done between June 15th and August 29th. Where are we in the planning process with respect to clearing the spaces to accommodate the project?
The teachers are packing up and going through their belongings at the moment. It's a busy time of year for them to be doing that. We should have a dumpster arriving in the next couple of days that will go outside of the kindergarten classrooms to, you know, remove the stuff we know that we need to remove. And it's we're kind of in a difficult situation. We can't say to teachers, completely pack up your rooms because we don't know exactly whether the project's going to commence or not. So right now they're going through and they're kind of weeding out some things and they have some boxes.
Which is a good process regardless.
It is a good process regardless. You know, if the project does not go through this summer, we can probably still order the furniture, get the furniture in, clear the hallway, and make some improvements regardless. that would
And
be
then
worthwhile.
we'll at least know if BMP says we can't do it in that window, they can at least tell us how many days they think it will take, which will give us an idea of whether there's a window during the academic year to do it.
Right. And, you know, getting back to BMP, I think if they can't do it, then we might be able to look in one of these other zones and to see if Millennium Builders can do it. There's kind of a-
BMP.
So that's, we're waiting on that.
So, from a practical perspective, we have authorized the RFP has failed. Do we need to authorize you to pursue a contract with BMP within the scope of what was financially authorized?
I think you could authorize us to use the
Easy IQC
the easy IQC process to find a suitable bidder.
or vendor, really.
Right.
Because wouldn't it then essentially be, they're essentially replying to the RFP, right?
Well, the RFP is closed at this point, it's not really replying to the RFP.
They could use the scope of work and the RFP and the details.
I think it's belt and suspenders, but I think it is helpful from a governance perspective to have recorded in the minutes that we authorize you to do this, so there's no issue.
How do we reconcile that with the fact that we wanted to get multiple bids for projects that are over the number of $10,000 in the past?
I think we solicited multiple bids, and my understanding is that the easy IQC process is sort of a substitute for that bidding because they're vetted. It is my strong preference to get multiple bids, and my strong preference is to get a robust response to our RFP. I know it's been the town of Reading's practice of the past couple of years to not bid things and just go right to easy IQC for everything. So there's certainly precedent with respect to the municipality doing it that way. So to the extent our arm has been twisted here, if BMP comes back and says we can't do it this summer, then I think we have a conversation about bidding it again and seeing if we can find somebody on a longer time horizon. Right?
Or if they come back with a crazy number.
Right. I think if they come back outside of the ballpark that we originally budgeted, then we need to schedule a meeting and talk about it.
I think we need to, you know, if we had to go second time around, I certainly could do a better job of leading, you know, shaking horses to the water. You know, shaking trees right, and getting some contractors interested.
I think part of the problem is it's a relatively small job.
And it's in
Tight timeline.
yeah.
When there's all these folks who are doing larger scale school construction projects everywhere in that same time window.
That's exactly right.
Do we have an idea of how long the project will take?
It wasn't really the length of the project, it was really, you know, scheduling it during that window. That they talked about, right?
Yeah, they talked about just
Right,
the
wasn't it-
scheduling, the scheduling challenges and, you know, what our expectations were with when we really ideally like to get the project underway and completed. So they, you know, through the system, these are vetted contractors and they have, you know, it's a competitive bid process underneath.
Once we get their bid back, we'll have the timeline and kind of figure out.
And then we can
this is-
figure
know
out-
It's gonna take this amount of
Yeah,
time.
what happens.
To find another window.
I mean, I think it would be helpful if we gave some guidance that said, you know, if BMP comes back this week and they say we can do it this summer, we can do it within your budget. We don't want to have another meeting just to say, yeah, go do that.
Right.
So to the extent that we're gonna want to take some action, I think we should take some action within those parameters. And if that fails, then we're coming back to have another conversation.
Do you want to extend that to the end if they don't? You know, if they fail on one of those measures that we authorize them, Jason, to, you know, reissue the RFP?
Yeah.
Or to look at the other vendor in the easy,
Well, I think if we allow,
Yeah, we're not
our
gonna
administration to negotiate with anybody qualified under IQC.
Right.
That will cover either of those. So what it sounds like is that, this is a motion to authorize the administration to, solicit quotations through the easy IQC process and contract with a qualified vendor for completion of the RES modernization project during the summer, provided it is within the confines of the allocated budget. Well said, Laura. Yeah. Survive. Any discussion? There isn't, all in favor? Passes 6-0.
Thank you, that's very helpful. And then the second part of this is even though the John Reed Middle School component wasn't improved in full, we have an idea for funding a portion of the John Reed Middle School, the furniture piece out of end of year funds. And we can talk about that when we get to item C.
What was the logic for the ARPA? They just ran out of money.
It wasn't, ARPA, it was Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen decided to only put $14,000 to the voters, and the voters said, okay. I wasn't privy to those meetings specifically, I think Laura might
I
have.
was there. I think they were anticipating we would have enough of a surplus at the end of the year to cover it. I don't know, did they have that conversation with you?
they did ask me where we were looking for end of year funds.
Okay, that was, so, yeah, the next step was that they were supposed to work. With Sarah, I don't know, if we don't have the money to cover all of it, I'm not sure what happened. My understanding based on the meeting was that they would cover the gap, or at least that was their intention.
So they're ready to go back to them or not?
There's no
ARPA
money
funds are
left.
done, yeah,
Well, it's all spoken for anyway, it'll come back if it doesn't get spent, but.
yeah.
Yeah, we're on around for the project less 14,000.
Right, yeah. It's a lot of paperwork for $14,000.
So the total project was about 175,000, which included furniture for the library commons, the reading room, the seminar wall, and a lot of tables and chairs for this particular room. We looked at this project and we said, you know, we could probably fund the furniture in the library commons. We already have tables and chairs used for the most part. And we could take off the seminar construction piece because we, you know, that would require finding someone to do the work. And we really just identified the furniture in the library as kind of a option for entity fund, which was approximately $80,000. So you can see, so what that would look like would be not getting the furniture in here, which was those tables and chairs, not, you know, breaking apart the seminar wall and installing glass or doing the acoustical tiles, but taking a look at the furniture that's in the library in the reading room and replacing some of that furniture. And so that was part of the project we think that we could probably do with end of year fund, just order through the same company that we would order RES furniture, which is media education.
And we're sort of in the awkward spot of, it sounds like the town sort of suggesting that that's what we do, right? Which is, you know, an unusual approach when we talk about a capital request, you know, it's all the same pocket, and I'd rather see it through a capital funding plan, but the money returned than say use operating to cover the capital, and it's all cash.
Yeah. So we can model what that looks like in 2 agenda items now. You want to see that?
So, any questions on the education spaces project while we're on it? So hopefully we'll look for some updates by the end of the week, which will give us an idea whether we need to schedule something next week to further discuss it. Okay. Okay. There's nobody's busy usually. All right, so that brings us to item 6D on the agenda, which is John Reed Middle School courtyard. So as everybody in the room recalls, on February 14th, our community lost a sixth grader, Brian Carlson. Brian, among other things, was a great lover of the outdoors and outdoor spaces and critters and creatures and being outside. And in the aftermath of the tragedy, lots of folks in the community came together to talk about what we can do to honor Brian's life and honor his love of the outdoors. And as a member of the John Green community in particular. And so as a result of those conversations, a group came together to start working on how we can properly honor him in this space. And the idea of revitalizing the courtyard in this space came to the fore as the appropriate way to do that. And so thanks to the dedicated labor of Mike Hoffman and his landscape architects at his company, we've been able to come pretty far in a proposal for how to revitalize that space, and in conjunction with Jen and with Brian's parents to kind of get us to a place where tonight we can start talking about this project publicly and move it in the direction that will be necessary as far as raising appropriate funds to take care of it and raising labor from the community to help make it a reality. So I'll let Dr. McKinnon and Mike kind of lead the way on what we're thinking.
I'm gonna copy our design, I'll pass out. The concept for where we are right now. It's just the right time. How about perfect? So I'm sure everybody's familiar with the space, the courtyard space right in the center here of the school. Seen better days, tough to maintain. I think that the custodial staff does what they can to try to keep up with it, but the weeds grow fast, and you know, sometimes it looks a little bit more like a neglected terrarium than a space where you want to bring a class out to you know, enjoy the outdoors. So I think we approach this from a couple of different standpoints. One is we want to attract, you know, the students to go outside. And that's part of kind of honoring Brian's, you know, memory in his life, you know, enjoying the outdoors. And that's a great space to do it. It's not too small, not too big. It does get some decent sun. It's protected from the wind. So it could be very nice. So we wanted to put together a space where you could bring a full classroom or even possibly two classrooms together, where you could have shade if you needed it, or you could be in the sun if you needed it. But also we wanted to design something that would be easy to maintain and it would have longevity, that wouldn't require a lot of ongoing maintenance, that if, you know, there wasn't a lot of custodial attention, that you know, it wouldn't fall apart in the course of the season. So that led us to where we are here. There's a lot of paved space here, but with no pavement, as you might think of it as, you know, out front here, the asphalt. But this is what's called, we've specified a project what's called Flexi Pave. If you've been to the garden at RES that we put in, there's a small Flexi Pave patio in front of the little fountain and waterfall that we put in, you know, with the tree that grows out of the center.
The pond, like where the pond is, like.
That's right in front of the pond. So it appears to be gravel until you step on it, and it's very firm, and you can't pick the gravel up and throw it in the pond. That's why we did it RES. But we would choose that here because it's flexible. You can create interesting designs with it. It's porous. So imagine if we had, you know, pavement through this whole area that wasn't porous, we'd have a major drainage issues, no way to get rid of the water. So the water can flow right through this. I have some samples of the product that we can pass around a little bit just so you can see, but that's, looks like a, a puck of gravel, but, and that's exactly what it is, real gravel that's kind of held together with a bonding agent, but you can pour water directly through that. That's called flexi tape, there's a couple other names. Comes in many different colors, so you can see we're using 2 colors. One for the, one for the main pack that connects the 2 doors, and then one for the group area here. The other paver, and this would also be a flexi tape product, it's a different color, charcoal or black, for the school, for the fall, for the school logo kind of. The other paving area that's low maintenance here would be artificial turf. So we were wanting to work artificial turf into several of these spaces. Real turf is not an option here. Shoot, I should have brought artificial turf with me. It's not the artificial turf from a long time ago, the very short nap, the stuff that you kneel on that, like it pokes you in the knees. It actually looks like grass. It's very nice these days. So the main spaces out here are, for shade, when the sun is really beating on this side, and you want to get into the shade underneath this pergola. That space is almost 40 feet long. So, 40 feet is from here to that back wall, or, maybe here to the back wall. That's enough to fit a whole classroom in, and then some. This is, a space on the opposite side that's about 30 feet long, in the artificial turf. This one's on the flexi tape. Underneath shade sails, part of what Brian, I believe, liked to do with sailing. He was inspired by being in the water, and the shade sails went through that line. So this is another space where you could have a classroom outside under the shade sails. It's not 100% protection from the sun, but it's something, and it also lends some interest. Especially when you come out here, that'd be the first thing you probably would see and look at. Many different colors. We've got them shown here just in one color, make it easy to understand what you're looking at. We have the pond and the waterfall in the same area here, but kind of reconfigured in a couple of ways. We've elongated it a little bit. We've added boulders along the side or large flat rocks. Did the same work at RES, so that the students could actually get close to the water, get onto those flat rocks without tipping them into the water. They're very heavy, so we would use large rocks through there so that students could stand on them without tipping them into the pond. This is a raised, the bridge is the same bridge that's there, just slightly, moved slightly so that, it's not just a bridge to nowhere. I think it comes straight across here and then kind of dead end right now. We've got it so that you can kind of come around and through or come around and through. This is a raised, you can see a couple of steps on either side, 4 steps on either side, a raised terrace area that kind of looks over the whole garden. Again, artificial turf surrounded by boulders. So we're getting a little grade here, the high ground and the middle ground, and then, this is the kind of the low ground here. As far as furnishing, we've got kind of inspired by the furniture that we were going to order for here and at RES. We would try to find some sort of fun outdoor furniture that can stay out there, permanently or at least during the season. Planting wise, it's not all artificial surface. It's a lot of artificial surface to keep the maintenance down, but we do have planting beds here and here. They're very shady. There's a memorial tree here that we would maintain, but shade plantings would go in these 2 planting beds by the walkway, tucked in, to some of these spaces here, up against the pond around the side. And then some of the feedback that we received from, the group that's working to, give feedback on the design was maybe some more planting against the back walls. So that's the space that we've designed, but there are uses here that you might not be able to see. Do you have that other PowerPoint? Yep. Yeah, it might go through that really quick. Before we leave this again, this is all different types of that same product. if we could get the board, the rest of the board access. This, like, not right now, but, you know, in between meetings, it'd be great. So, you know, I'm not gonna read through this, but, so here's where we come up with, you know, inspiration for, you know, pergolas and maybe shade sails, technically shade sails, that we're, you know, but, here is, you know, here's what flexi pay would look like in reality. It would look like you're getting ready to step on gravel, but it's very solid and it never moves. Again, it's for many different colors, and, you know, infinite different shapes. Not like a, you know, a regular paving stone that's labor intensive to lay or to cut into different shapes that we can. It's almost like the epoxy that you would see, you know, at a commercial building where they can make different designs, but it's all. Not really, gotta keep it clean. Yeah, you definitely want to keep it clean because what causes them to not be porous is the debris that gets inside, and that's another reason to keep the plantings on the simple side and contained. Here's shade sails, you can see they come in you know, multitude of different colors. They have, you know, large poles here that you know, usually stay in the field that hold them up. And we get a number of configurations. We should go 300 designs, but we could come up with any, you know, any design that we want. Brian was a big fan of rubber duck, and I think we could probably work something into either a mural on the wall or, you know, ducks that are in the pond, but static, not just floating around and getting pushed to one side, but somehow figure out a way to you know, attach them to and make them a part of the permanent structure. Here's some of the outdoor furniture that's, you know, along the lines of some of the furniture we were looking at for the modernization product or project. So that we can have, you know, small groups that get together. You know, we have those small groups throughout the design, especially in those turf areas. So the walls around, if you remember standing in this space, what it looks like, there are large panels of brick walls out there, and there are opportunities, not just for murals where we could have art students, you know, put murals up there and you could refresh them and change them every so often. But we thought about having an interactive mural. You know, for example, you know, a tree, you know, that's painted out there where the students are able to make butterflies or birds that attach to the wall. And then at the end of the season, at the end of the school year, they can take their bird home, and next fall, then the next class comes and then they can make their birds and butterflies and attach them to the wall. So try to make the mural somewhat interactive. One of the things we talked about that didn't make it into the design was, you know, a garden area, you know, a vegetable garden area where students could garden. You know, a couple of reasons I'm the one that decided not to put that in there. One is to keep the space clean again, you know, because of what Sherrod just asked me. There's no maintenance to the gravel. Yes, got to keep it clean. So vegetable gardening is not known for its cleanliness. You get soil down in there, you can't get it back out. So it's, you know, plus the vegetables, you know, when I go to RES during the summer, you know, the vegetables are like, you know, ready for the picking, no students there, right? So it's a summer thing. So we deliberately try to pick plants that were great in the spring and great in the fall and even some winter interest. So this didn't quite make it.
To the extent there's an interest in beds, we do them outside of the school.
Absolutely, absolutely be great. Raised beds and yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Questions? Comments? I think it would be nice. Yeah, I'd like to.
Or Mike,
Yeah.
is this just like, if you had like, just like a brush, like, or a broom, I mean, if you get the debris out?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's when you have, you know, soil and then rain that
Mhm.
washes it down inside that it starts to plug it up.
Right. I'll give them to you after. They're like giant Rice Krispie trees.
Yeah,
Making
very
it
heavy.
Yeah, very heavy.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's bad for your team.
Do you have any idea of cost?
We're working on it. That's the next step. So we were, one of the hurdles we wanted to jump first was we wanted the family to see the design, get some feedback from them and, you know, give it some time, you know, for everybody to kind of take a look and, you know, if you've had some feedback, I'd love to hear it, you know, whether it's from the community or from the board. And then we can work on pricing and see if we can get done. You know, there's an opportunity here for volunteer labor here for sure, but there's also some things in here that you want to have professionally done.
There's a few different sort of big nuts that have to get ordered with significant lead time to get this done.
Is there, I'm assuming you spoke to Jen and students at the school, board. Like, does this meet what they would want out there?
But that's
Jen, what do you think, Jen?
I think awesome, because what is out there now does not work. And Brian loved that space. So when he was in the building, he would be on that glass, looking out there, saying, can't I go out and see the fish and the crawfish? So in that regard, people are always looking for spaces to go. And yes, it is a space and there are classrooms around it. But those classrooms are not high academic use classrooms around it. So it'd be great shared space. Let's go.
Yeah. With it being an interior courtyard, I envision that as, being, those are two of the doors that we could prop open all day long without having a safety issue. And I'd, love to see students using that as their hallway versus the one that's just parallel to it, but down a few.
Just the idea of being able to get fresh air between classes is so novel around here.
Yeah.
And the other piece is, so if a student's in a wheelchair or something like that, it will be very accessible.
Totally accessible, except for the, the area in the upper left there. Everything else is, completely accessible.
I love envisioning at some point in the future, having the capacity to, have it be a privilege or some students eat lunch out there or to enjoy, group work out there or whatever else it needs to be.
We had that when I was at Wilton, at Miller and Driscoll,
I built that.
the Japanese restaurant. But the thing
Oh,
that I
the
remember
center
for the,
courtyard.
yeah,
what we did
you
with
had to
the
ask
theater.
permission to use it.
Yeah,
So it's changed, we've changed a lot. If it's just gonna be a space where everybody can use it, and it's not something you have to ask permission to enter. It should be just, you go and when you want to, and that's what makes it so lovely.
that was an elementary space.
That was a
You know,
beautiful space. but You
for
weren't
an
really
elementary school.
encouraged to go in it, you know?
Yeah. That was
So it's a
a tough project logistically,
Yeah.
but it was a fun one.
Yep.
And I can envision, so as an example, the multicultural projects day on Friday, instead of being crammed in here for food and music, using that space would just expand the whole thing.
That would be
Yeah,
beautiful.
and we were actually talking about even on nights that the select choir is singing.
Nice.
Use that space, use that space. Ideally, you can have grade level movie nights or something like that in that space.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of opportunity.
That's great.
I think that,
The blow of not getting the budget for the other part of the project, right?
but hey, so the purpose of tonight was sort of to introduce the concept, and introduce the project to the board and to the community with a goal that, the sort of working group that's been pushing this and Mike, to your credit and to your company's credit, kind of trying to get the pricing together and get an idea of what it's going to be, so that we can start figuring out what a fundraising target is and from whom we would solicit to help make this a reality, once we have an idea of what the cost is, and have a discussion about what, if anything, the board is interested in contributing to get this off the ground. Whether that's some of the larger pieces that are going to take lead time and require a heavy lift, or some combination of things. I know that we will have a relative ease getting volunteer labor in this community to pitch in and do this. And so if it's a project over the summer, there's going to be a demo phase of getting stuff out of there, which is going to be substantial. Followed not necessarily in short succession by rolling out the work, so.
I remember there's a request for additional playground equipment outside. Is there a way to like bundle this with, if you're gonna have extra help and volunteers to help with that?
I think that depends. If we have playground equipment to install, then, I have no problem with volunteers. It certainly makes sense.
So I'd like to get some budget numbers on this for the next meeting, or, in advance of the next meeting, that we can chew on a little bit. And then maybe we can make decisions on the 27th. Okay, based on where we end up.
It sounds like there's consensus that the project makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to the extent, Mike, you're able to break out any components that make sense as sort of a seed, that's certainly helpful.
Oh, yeah. Yep, we'll do.
Because if it's gonna take us 8 weeks to get these sales, we'll get those orders as soon as we can, right?
How much does the Netflix cost?
That'll be
Sell- sell it back.
It's the next item on the agenda.
Pennies on the dollar.
Hold that thought. It's a good one.
Oh, no.
All right, so thank you, Mike and team. We will revisit in 3 weeks. And for anybody listening who wants to have any feedback on this, feel free to reach out to Mr. Marriott or myself or Mike, and we'll all get to the right. That brings us on to financial year-end updates.
Okay, so we've tied a couple of the conversations we've had tonight into the discussion that we can have here. And we've got some good news and some choices to make concerning end of year finances. And so we've put together, Sarah put together a budget sheet that organizes our thinking into kind of a dashboard. It's challenging to see. So we'll have to scroll around a little bit. In blue, we've got our health insurance dashboard with various indicators. In red is kind of our unexpended funds anticipated for the end of the year. And then in the 2 shades of green, we've got some choices to make about how to spend those funds. And so first, let me take you to health insurance. And as a reminder, we finished end of year 21-22 at a negative $200,528 in our health benefits account. And at the beginning of this school year, at the end of last year, to start this year, you made an additional board contribution of $800,000. So we started the balance in the health benefits account at $600,528. The current balance in the health benefits account is $455,000, and the remaining funds in our lines 270, 271 is approximately $475,000. So the total pot for health insurance is around $930,000. We look at claims for March, April, and May. March claims were high, 418,000. April claims lower, 214,000. May, 326,000. And the average of those 3 months is approximately 320,000. So there are various fees that come out during the next 2 months and additional contributions, which puts us at a projected end of year place of $635,000.
So there's another way to say that you ran under budget on health insurance with that number by $30,000.
Yes. Yeah. And that's very different from where we ended last year at negative $200,000. So remember this number, we'll come back to it. Unexpended currently is $1,137,000. However, there are some additional costs that we anticipate between the end of the year and some areas that there's some uncertainty about. And so we do need to, out of the 1.1 million, we're setting aside approximately $25,000 for special ed transportation. Another $25,000 for ESY.
Does the 1.1 include the projected health insurance or the health? So that as of May 31?
This is,
Yes.
yes,
So we would
So you
back out
don't-
of that another 320,000 in June projected health plan.
oh, it does not, yeah, right, it does not include the June estimate.
Okay. And whatever contribution we'd be making to land where we want to be in health benefit.
Right, and we've got that over on the green.
Okay.
Yep. So, transportation monitors, approximately $15,000, stipends, $125,000, substitute, $50,000. We've got some end of year unencumbered expenses There's things in there like mulch, some repairs that we need to make, end of year repairs for approximately $60,000. So the sum of the end of year estimates is approximately 300,000, which still leaves us at a projected unexpended fund of about 835,000. Okay, so this is where we are at the moment. And now we can take you over to our green area and show you some recommendations, and you can toggle these on and off, which will lower this 835,000. So, for example, during the budget process, we did talk about spending approximately $96,000 to pay for Veritas. So if we click on the Veritas payments, you can see we go down from, where are we? 835,000, toggle these, and now we're up to, down to 739,000. We talked about funding a tractor for Kubota. The math textbooks, we funded some funds towards math textbooks. We anticipate about $17,000 left. And you can see these are the funds that these are the things that we talked about during the budget process, right? And now we're down to $706,000 unexpended.
We need to include the health insurance.
Well, we're getting there, yep. And so over here in column G, we have the planned end of year expenses, the things that we've talked about during the budget process. And now we have some recommended end of year expenses. So if we wanted to make an additional contribution to the health benefits account of approximately 200,000, which would mean that we would have projected would go from 706 to 506 and get back down to where do we want to start the year next year. So currently, just a reminder, we're at 635,000. If we added 200,000 from an additional contribution, that would be approximately 835,000.
Okay.
What was the percent we were gonna up the health insurance estimate by, do you remember?
You mean the percent recommended by Brown and Brown and what we ended up funding?
Yeah, like what percentage did we think? Was it 8%? I don't remember the number.
Around 800,000 recommended.
No, not the percent.
8.5%.
Was it 8.5%?
I want to say.
We budgeted at 5.
The recommendation was.
The recommendation was higher.
So we can. And another thing to look at is in the past, we've talked about having 2 months or 2.5 months. In that bank there, right? And so if the average, I don't know what's the average for the year right now? 250. You know, 750. That'd be 3 months. Right.
So that's a reasonable number, is what I'm trying to figure out.
Right. So you can, now, this amount here for $200,000, we toggle that as an option. You could change this and it could be 150,000. And that would increase or decrease the projected end of the year. Right, so I'll leave it at 200,000 and you can tell me where you would like that set.
We do see that claims are trending a little bit higher. So,
Right.
So that's why we budgeted at the 320 mark for June, rather than budgeting the 200.
So again, the 635 has the 320 in it, right?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
So
And I,
so 300,
yes,
better, 340 is better, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before we-
Because,
Yeah.
because it's trending.
That's exactly what I wanted, yes, that's good. So Laura said, can we talk about the other items on there? So
You can try class, right?
yeah, so, you know, these are just a list in no particular order of the difference between the planned expenses and some recommended expenses.
I need to see any RES.
That's already funded.
Yep,
That's funded.
RES is already funded through the town as a capital. Yeah.
That was approved at referendum.
It's a RMS that we were short on.
Because JRMS was not put through the referendum. We were told, go to ARPA. We went to ARPA. They gave us 14,000.
Okay, so my mistake, RES, I mean,
Yeah.
RMS, but
So everything that we click here, I made this a little smaller, which may be harder to see, so you can, you know, as we toggle these things, then this is gonna change, right? So, in the budget next year are Chromebooks as part of our Chromebook recycle, so, 150 Chromebooks could be $47,500. I mentioned this in item A of the agenda tonight, which is the John Reed Middle School project, which was not funded. We could purchase the furniture for the library commons and the reading room for $80,000. As we anticipate 6 kindergarten classrooms next year, in walking through the kindergarten classrooms over the past couple of days and couple of weeks, and looking at the smart boards, they are older models and they're currently mounted on the wall. So Sarah and I were talking about this might be an opportunity to upgrade the interactive whiteboards, actually put them on stands, because we are reconfiguring the walls and spaces in those 6 classrooms, and those other smart boards, interactive whiteboards, which are still good, could be used in different locations. So that would be $19,500 for those 6 rooms. We just talked about the courtyard over at John Reed Middle School in terms of some additional seed money. We added $50,000 as a potential set aside for that. For example, some of the furniture that you talked about, Mike, could be furniture, or the shade cells. Are there components of the project once you get pricing that we could contribute, because they're in a sense outdoor furniture that would benefit the students. We talked about the VERIF of $96,000 as an additional VERIF that you could consider. And finally, we had a conversation at last month's board meeting about some students who talked about doing some additional playground equipment over at John Reed. There are some significant portions of their ideas, which I don't think we could act on this summer, but there are some basic painting of the lines, additional playground equipment, and other things. So we set aside approximately $5,000 for that. So if you looked at all the planned expenses and the recommended expenses, and you selected everything, then that would bring down the end of year balance to $253,000, which includes the $200,000 healthcare contribution, and would make the end of year balance in the health benefits account at $835,000.
If we have the space, why not do the full bore project for the middle school? Was that just, I think the original project was 140, right?
Or 175,
Yeah, why don't we?
one take to 175.
Yeah, and that's what the selectmen said to do.
Right.
Yeah,
Why don't we?
that was my question.
Okay.
And can we do other playground equipment if we have the money too? I mean, it's there.
Well, do we need any kind of buffer?
In terms of the playground equipment, you know, I don't think we've fully identified the scope of that project. I don't have prices. There's a lot of work that needs to get done there.
You're cutting purchase orders 25 days on, or 24 days on that space.
And so, we could certainly get some nets and some equipment and paint the lines and so on, but I don't know. We're not putting a roof over the gargoyle pit. We're not, there's lots of,
Allocate for it, even if we're not going to necessarily spend it.
They mentioned one, structural piece of equipment, monkey bars or something. Monkey bars? Yeah, something they wanted.
They mentioned playground equipment, slides and swings and so on.
Okay.
I just think that there's a lot to that. How big do you go?
I don't want to set a short question though, which is, can you just set aside money to do something as opposed to having a purchase order? And I think you need to be a little bit more concrete about that by June 30th.
We need a very clear.
What I thought you said, Sharad, was.
I said, okay, so I'm saying we should do this whole thing if we have the money for it. And then if the playground thing, you don't know what it's gonna be, can we just say, hey, we're gonna earmark 25K for it?
You can't carry it over on your mark with that.
I think 5,000 would make sense for
Just for-
line
yeah.
and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Balls and other stuff.
Yeah.
What I thought you said was, what about the whole John Reed Middle School project? Okay,
Yeah.
and so that's $175,000.
Minus 14.
So
14 doesn't even cover
so
the soft.
161. Yeah, so we put 161.
If you change it on the spreadsheet, it'll change it.
Yeah, so just the.
Yeah.
I could change it.
So which of those items in the light green, which one of those are already in budget for next year? For sure, the additional bear
And the
and the
Chromebooks.
Chromebooks.
Yeah, the Chromebooks and the additional graph.
So we would be pulling those expenses forward from next year to this year.
And then you
I
have a
think-
surplus next year.
In general, anything we can do to pull forward helps us keep the budget flow for future years. And I think that's in the best interest of taxpayers. Otherwise, this money just goes into, you know,
It doesn't go back
town
to
reserve
the taxpayer.
fund that we effectively don't really get to use. So I'm happy to pull anything forward.
And then we have to ask for it next year and.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to, that is definitely. I mean, I would feel also better about pulling it, forward because we're consciously underestimating or, on the health expense. Or not underestimating, no, we say, we raised it by 5% when the recommendation was 8.5%, right? It could go south on us and end up at 9%, and then we would have to, if we have the money now to do these things, we should just do them. And that way, we wouldn't have to make that decision next year. If the health expense gets out of hand, but people are doing.
So we already did pull forward the dark green. Yeah, we did that at budget. Right,
Yeah.
This would be pulling forward even more.
So the whole JRMS project would be doing that little room, that extra room and
Yeah.
the furniture in here. I think that makes, like, just changing the furniture isn't such an, I think, make real impact. Do something really different that the kids are gonna, that's gonna have a bigger impact. I love new furniture, but new furniture is just, like, let's do something really different.
They've
like,
been
you know.
asking for acoustical tiles for that space for probably 10 years.
Right,
Yeah.
and let's do the things that have real impact. Is there a concern not having enough in that buffer projected in your number? Like, what number do you want to land? Do you want to land on 0? Or do you want to have a little bit there in case there's unforeseen expenses that pop up? It sounds like.
So we're gonna have to end up at like
Well-
493 for us to go take care.
This is what this is. Because,
That's the contingency.
that's kind of us, yes, kind of looking at funds we anticipate.
And we're not looking to make a decision tonight, right? This is a June 27th decision.
So why aren't we trying to get that to 0 then? Add other projects that we haven't, that you want to do?
Well, we don't have other projects other than what's on this board. I mean, we could, you know, this is kind of a philosophy, kind of a board philosophy about where you wanna.
Right, you could slide the courtyard project up and down to make the contribution to the courtyard, whenever it takes to 0, is one way that you could theoretically.
Because that 50 is a placeholder and it's definitely a portion of what rest. Right.
And it's definitely not the whole either.
With that,
And it's definitely not the whole either.
oh, no, it's a portion of what.
So say we allocated 150 for that. I'm just trying to understand, like, why are we trying to get that to 0? We have this backlog of things we want to do.
And Jason's right, there's a philosophy to this. I was even, a little bit uncomfortable with those 4 things that we pulled forward, during budget time, into this year.
Well, is that money that's gonna be
It's-
spent no matter what?
Yeah, it's. the
Do we have to
philosophy
pay
is-
those variants or no?
Yes,
We
right.
do. So then, of course,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna pay them.
The philosophy is you put together a budget and you ask the town and the taxpayers to fund that budget. And then you make it through the school year, you use what you need to use. If you have left over, you return it to the town. That's one way to take it back. But this is
To be
another.
clear, the money's hasn't actually been returned to the town. It's been
You
returned.
say you're not going to.
Well,
fund it.
no, that's not the distinction I'm making.
Yeah.
It's been returned to the town's fund balance where it sits. It has been a very long time since the town has actually rebated or reduced the mill rate on the basis of that fact.
And we have a healthy fund in there, and when we said we need money for the JRMS project this year, they said, no, you can't have that money, which is in part there because you've returned money to us in the past. And we weren't given the instruction, but the implication was sort of that you're gonna have this money at the end of the year, use that. And so if we don't use that and we don't use the unreserved fund balance, we're not getting our projects done, but the taxpayers are still being taxed the money.
And the taxpayers have voted saying, hey, this is the amount of money we want to spend on the school.
But Chris, to follow up on yours, how often has that happened where money has been given back?
Almost every year for the past 10 years.
Well,
Really?
Yeah, maybe every year.
Then somebody's got some explaining to do.
In the aggregate, it's probably $2 million.
But you said that at some point in the past, there was an adjustment to the mill rate based on what was returned.
I don't know at what point there was. I know that is a philosophy.
I don't remember it. I'm not saying it didn't happen.
In a lot of places, that is the philosophy.
Okay.
That you take that as a mill rate adjustment.
Hmm. To the good.
Right.
Yeah,
Generally.
if that were the case, I would, of course, say, let's give money back, but I don't think it's possible.
In a universe where the taxpayers aren't gonna see 173 or 373 or 473 as a tax adjustment or whatever that number is. And in a world where we haven't been able to come to terms on a non-lapsing account that would encourage us to keep 2% every year to fund projects like this. We're in this sort of awkward no man's land. You're either using this to advance the interest of the schools, or you're saying, nope, we're not gonna do this, we're gonna budget the best we can next year, and then when we go to budget in January, we're gonna say, we'd like to budget $160,000 for John Reed furniture. The first thing to get cut is $160,000 for John Reed furniture, because we have to budget safely for everything else.
Yeah, the board of selectmen essentially told us to this. You got the money, you spend it, we're not gonna do it.
I'm not sure they told
Well,
us.
I don't think they told us.
By not saying, here's the money.
They did not provide any further direction. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be one.
they questioned whether we would have the money and whether it would make sense to fund something with ARPA if we might have the money to do it.
So the spending it down to zero would be, setting a new precedent or just a much different change in the philosophy of how we handle end of year. That, for sure in 8 years that I've done it, we haven't had anything like that kind of discussion before. And it comes during a year when spending on projects related to schools is, there's a spike that's happening this summer. And I think there are a lot of people that were kind of shocked by the big project at the high school. I'm not saying shock good, shock bad, I'm just saying, wow, millions, right? It's still kind of coming home, and then we change our philosophy and spend a zero here. That's, I think it's kind of a big deal.
We have spent a zero on at least one and possibly two occasions, in as much as we use every last dime to go back to health.
Yes, we did,
Yeah, I mean, we are being
more than
transparent.
once.
I don't think that this is something we're doing in secret. We're being transparent and we're saying, we're gonna pull forward some of these funds, we're gonna invest in the schools. I mean, we're doing really positive things here, and by pulling these funds forward, we're gonna be able to keep the budget down next year, which will impact taxpayers.
I would consider columns G, H, and I to really be more appropriately in D and E, because they're committed.
Mhm.
It's not like we're making a choice about this. We took it out of the
I agree.
fiscal 24 budget.
We already agreed to that.
Right, we already did that, so.
Even more than, well, I guess the same as like that. Right.
So it's a little misleading to consider that a choice at this point. I think that's committed.
Right.
And I think we have to trust the administration's best guess on D and E to be a conservative estimate of what needs to happen there. And that moves us into the KLM section. And the first question is, do we take the suggestion that the John Reed EdSpec project is appropriate use of that money, because that was what was implied in the denial of the funds. And then what else do you want to do with it?
I'm, like, on a philosophy thing, I'm okay with I'm trying to understand what the downside is, for not having that philosophy of funding reserves. I think it does benefit the taxpayer and benefits the school.
Right, to the extent that the voters said 24,802,000, whatever the number is what we're investing in school, then
Yeah,
ought to be invested in school.
exactly. And that's what.
I'm not saying it does.
No, I'm just trying
Yeah, I'm
to.
not saying it doesn't, it's just that the history of it is such that there was only one item in K, one line item in K. And it was that first one right there. It was, we would consider that, and then after that was done, the rest would go back.
But look at
But
our
I'm questioning
extremely
that
dated
one,
schools.
why not?
Yeah,
Maybe we're doing it the wrong way in the
Right.
past, and this is a more productive way to invest in our schools while still keeping budgets that are reasonable.
Right, well, there's another way of looking at it too, though. If you authorize me to spend whatever, and I said at the end of the year, you know what, I have some extra, so how would you feel if I spent it all regardless?
I mean, that's how all.
You're not on the other side of it either.
I mean, every company has budgets for departments, and if there's a surplus, you know, they have the right to spend,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what is allocated,
Where it makes sense.
right? And
I used to work.
Yeah, but in small business, that's not the way it works, you know, in even medium-sized business, not the way it works. When you don't spend it all, that's the win. Right?
Right, and and like we said, if it was actually going to go directly back to the taxpayers, I would agree with you and say, hey, that's a win.
Well, no, it's not going to, you know, the first selectman. It's, I mean, it goes to a fund that is, you know,
But it's-
owned by us collectively.
But it's not.
But it's not but it
It's
be
just
allocated
we were
for
denied
the schools.
use of that fund this year.
And the fund is already over the target, it's over 20% of operating, so it's, you know.
Right.
Not really our purview, you know, there's 3 seats on the board of finance coming up. I think that's gonna be that.
But I would argue that I've been here a year and a half, and we've made some tough decisions in the past. I don't want to be into this, like, we have the excess now, and we were budgeted to do it, let's do those projects, so we're not making the same tough decisions next year, and we don't know what's gonna necessarily happen.
I think the kids deserve it too, after they've been through.
I'm glad we're not making a decision on it tonight. I need to turn this whole thing for sure, you know, I have a, you know, I have 8 years of history in the way that I've operated this way, this would be different for me to approve something like that. So.
I think the only question I have is, to the extent there's an interest in funding the full John Reed project out of the unspent funds, is there an advantage in making that decision now from a timeline perspective, getting the work done this summer? Or because it is primarily furniture, does it make a difference 3 weeks later?
I think meeting with the furniture vendor today, I think timing does matter in terms of ordering it so that it's here in September. In terms of the construction project, we don't, you know, we need to have conversations with the BBM, BHP, there's a big company strike or BHP. Is whether they can either do the first project or one of the second. Well, the project here is really just it's just a wall, the seminar wall.
And that can be done even more than that. It's not disruptive to.
And if it's allocable for a specific project, then it's okay if you don't necessarily spend it during the summer, correct?
We would need a contract by June 30th to do it.
Okay. Is that relevant? So if we approve it now, you think you'll be able to get a contract by June 30th?
Not if we approve on June 27th.
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of the project at John Reed is furniture.
Right.
It's only a small construction fee for the seminar wall, right?
Yeah, I would like to approve that project this year because we did as a board unanimously approve the project already. And I think that we have the money and I just don't see a reason to now go back on.
It's only $6,300 for the wall.
Yeah, so I agree with Laura.
That would need to be bid. That's
I would suggest that
Because
maybe.
you know, associates, because that's a little low.
There's a contingency. Isn't there?
Yes, at the bottom,
Yeah.
a big one.
Can we make a motion? Yeah. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the execution of the JRMS Educational Modernization Spaces Project in the amount of $161,000 to be added to the 22.
Unspent funding, fiscal 23.
Yeah, to be added to the unspent fund from fiscal 22-23.
Second.
Discussion.
Jason, you look concerned about, it. Like, are you not like, are you worried about getting this all done, because I know it's a lot on you, right?
No, I think, when it comes to the furniture vendor, it's just a matter of developing a bigger list. And we had that meeting today, and I think we have a good relationship and we can turnkey that. In terms of construction, either the person's available or not available.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if it's not, then the money goes back, we don't spend it, we can't hold it.
We could plan for it in the winter and do the invoice now and pay it now. Right?
No,
No.
It's a bit far from,
we have to close it out. So we,
More or less, but it'll end in September, you have that.
For example, on the furniture, you have to have an invoice with the, and say it's gonna go towards this.
So because the,
Or people.
writing, the RES project was the referendum, so that one is different.
Right,
Okay.
that's a capital allocation, right, we have to operate.
Can you go back to the other spreadsheet now and like uncheck everything?
you want me to uncheck everything?
Except the John Reed project.
That's what you're getting ready to do. You have to make it 161, getting ready to do.
There we go, 545, unspent.
It's a little, about 2.2%. Ish.
I think it's 845 on the side of 300 estimated.
What is, he said 845 with the 320 that we've estimated.
Well, no, 300, but that's 300
Yeah.
projected.
So technically, right now, there's 845, but we expect 300 of that to be spent on.
Yeah.
By the end of the year. So. I mean, I'm comfortable with that thought. It's fine.
and I'll have better, obviously I'll have better, firm numbers because.
You get a dollar
like,
then.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
They'll be closer.
They'll be much closer towards that.
Like, you know, every June it does drop, so I don't think it's gonna.
Yeah, I did see that. It's very low.
Significant drops, right?
Very
I don't think it's gonna be 320.
People finish their work and they take vacation to go to the doctor.
Right, yeah, my kids, that kind of thing.
Are we ready to vote?
I just like to be conservative until I
Don't really know.
we appreciate on it.
No, one thing can happen.
Are you ready to vote?
Any further discussion on the motion? John looks like he got it.
I just can't see.
Make it bigger.
Yes, I can. You just won't be able to see it all at once, which part of the screen?
No, it doesn't matter. Unless you perform LASIK on me right there.
That's the next one.
I think some students doing a tip for that.
As an eighth grader, will be happy to
Maybe.
memorize.
Remember high school students that developed over this. I
Why?
understand, I feel you, your pain.
I think thing isn't agreeing with me at all.
So the goal here with that, if this is approved, is that Sarah will be in a position to work with the furniture vendor to cut the PO for the whole lot of furniture, basically.
Yeah.
And that was, you had 80 before, is all the furniture 130?
I had 80,
That's
because
both rooms.
I had 80 because I was not counting the
That's right.
furniture.
Does that also mean that we'll talk to the MPP, whatever the other company is about this, or?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Can you, Laura, tell me again what you heard when the board of selectmen was considering this?
They asked about the project, they shared a little bit about the project, they asked some questions. One question was, what?
Who were they asking?
Me.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just me on the call. One question was, can we phase out the project? I said, this is sort of phase one of what we consider to be a multi-phase project, so no, not really. I mean, yes, you could do some of it now and some of it later, of course. And then the other question was, you know, just acknowledging that we typically have funds left over at the end of the year, and could we use that money? And I said, I certainly can't answer that.
But then they
I
reached out to
suggested that
Sarah,
they talk to Sarah.
and they did talk to Sarah, and got a number.
Jim Sanders did reach out and ask me where I thought we would end at the end of the year, but he and I talk on a routine basis.
Yeah.
So, but we did not, that was not, like I could have an additional conversation with him about this if you'd like.
What, and where did you estimate you were gonna end the year? When you were on, Jim?
So I told Jim that I thought it would probably be, but right, pretty much where we are.
So 545 or,
The 1137, the 835?
So, about the 835. And then I said that I thought that probably there would be some things that you would recommend, that the board would recommend, putting, historically, you've put money back into the, healthcare. And so I suggested that probably we would perhaps do that again. I told him about 300,000.
Yeah.
But again, that was just for trying to keep the conversation about kind of running your, well, that was not a formal, it was not a formal conversation. Particularly.
we're reading a lot between the lines,
I know.
but I don't think
Yes.
it's far fetched.
You don't.
I don't, but I'm facing it.
But,
People,
yeah.
have conversations.
But I definitely don't want it to sound like I had a formal conversation with him.
Yeah.
That was reporting back to an additional board that was about, there were gonna be what we talk frequently about. Where we can make some efficiencies between the board and the town. And where I think we're sort of where we are and where we're ending. So as part of those conversations, I keep them updated on where we are. We're talking about it.
Trying to scroll and try to pick the plot of things.
Mike, is your concern still around the philosophy thing about?
Yeah. Yeah, and now we're kind of doing it, we're voting in two pieces, so.
How would you propose that we fund projects like this when the town says no to them? I mean, we have to find a way to invest in buildings. And if the town says no, and we are also sending back our unexpended funds at the end of the year, you know, we're still taxing the taxpayers, and we're not giving the students reasonable school.
I mean, the
I would
normal
have to
method would be to
say,
put it in the budget.
you know, the town gave us the money to do, to have the budget, the selectmen set it up, right?
The Board of Finance said no to putting it to referendum.
Right.
Yeah,
On, and then it was discussed, it should go to ARPA, could go to ARPA.
yeah,
It went to the Board of Selectmen for an ARPA request, and they funded other things and then had $14,000 left over for the shows.
So I just wanted to be clear, the town didn't say no.
That was never asked.
Right.
well, sorry, when I said the town, I meant the board of finance.
Right. But the town did give us the 24 million budget increase for this year.
Mhm.
And that's what we're using.
Yeah, and the philosophy is they gave us the 24 for that specific budget, and to answer your question, you know, the normal method for financing it would be put it in the budget.
But we did put it in the budget.
No, we developed.
But it's not an operating
I'm sorry, we put it in the budget
expense.
as capital request, because we don't put these things in our operating budget.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not operating.
So we did do it the right way, and, you know, it wasn't approved.
Yeah,
Right, and the Board of Finance, when we went to them for $25,000 for the boiler repair, said take it out of operating. You'll have unspent money at the end of the year, just pay for it that way. And so we, see it out there. The Zoom transcript's not helpful.
thank you. You're trying to read the
Good
actual
stuff in.
transcript of it?
It's the Zoom transcript.
Oh, I've never looked at it, so.
Oh. I didn't know.
Not minutes, actually.
The minutes said nothing except this is how they decided,
Right.
and I was looking for Laura's name as a way to find, I think it might be
I
under
wasn't
the
getting
speaker.
called where they made the decision. I
Oh,
was on the
okay.
call before where they were
Okay.
having a preliminary discussion and I couldn't join the call where they had.
But even if we put all of that aside, we have a budget, we have the excess and the funds to do a project that we all think is worth doing.
I mean, I think as long as we're being transparent and we're not trying to like hide that we're spending this money, if we set a precedent and say, when we have unexpended funds at the end of the year, we're gonna pull projects forward to the extent that we can and keep future budgets down. And we're gonna spend some money on investments and then we're gonna return some money to the town. And I think as long as we keep a healthy balance and we are smart about the way that we spend our money, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
It's like we're putting it for 24.
Yeah, exactly. But it's almost like giving your kid $100 to go to the fair and he bought items for everybody, and he comes back with nothing. You gave him $100, but you didn't expect him to spend it all.
But we're not kids, we're elected board members trying to invest in school.
Same difference.
But this is a project we think is worth, we've all agreed is worth doing.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think we all voted for it to put it on the capital budget, yeah,
We all
And then
believe in
it was-
projects.
yeah, it didn't get voted on by the town, it got removed from the request. So is it our job to, yeah, all right, well, let's work around that situation, I'll get it anyway.
Our job is to make the school the best we can. Right, while spending taxpayer money, like, well.
Yeah.
The town spends, ARPA money on 6 AEDs.
Fix what?
What is the defibrillators?
Okay. Um, Repair the barn. $900,000 punishment. They're just lumped together. So let me ask a different question. Is part of your hesitation, Mike, that we're doing this in 2 steps? Or would it make no difference at all to
I'm
where you
definitely-
came out in 3 weeks?
Yeah, so. Yeah, I'll be transparent as well. I'm not comfortable moving from, where I have been for 7 years to expend to 0. I realize that when we check all those particular boxes with those particular amounts, we're still not at 0, we're at 200 and. But again, it's been my philosophy that the thing that we consider at the end of the year is how we're doing on health insurance, and the rest of it goes back, just the first line. I've taken a step, I was a part of that, I approved that budget there with the dark green, carry forwards in it. Yeah, like if we were voting on the whole thing tonight, I'm definitely no, I think I'm a no on this tonight, just because. Yeah. Just because it is against, I think, the philosophy that I've been operating by for so many years.
Let me,
Those 2 things can be in the same room at the same time.
Sure. Let me spin this hypothetically.
Right.
Let me spin this hypothetically and say, because there's some confusion as to what the board of selectmen did or didn't do, and I wasn't there, I don't know exactly what it was, but let's say we went back to them, and we said, can you please clarify why 14 and not 176? Like, what was the purpose of that? And their response is, well, we confirm that you're gonna have, significant unspent funds, we expect you to just use that for the board instead of ARPA, we're gonna use ARPA for something else. Or we would have given you ARPA, but for the fact that you had this unspent funds. That to me reads as a tacit approval both of the project and of this use of those funds. Would that change your viewpoint on that piece of it?
That kind of clarity, yeah.
Okay. And I don't know whether we would get that, but I'm just trying to.
But we're sort of a check and balance system, right? We're supposed to be fighting for the fund, like the schools, and they're sort of check them if they're willing to fund, right?
What a weird spot, because the Board of Selectmen isn't really a check on the schools at all.
True.
It's an independent budgeting silo, but in this case, because of this ARPA allocation, they have this weird was,
Other method
method of
funding
funding, right?
things. Tell me how we get to man with 14 and not the one
That's all that's left.
that's main here.
Right, this is here's the nickels that are left.
After the defibrillators, we
After they bought the ice cream at the fair. they came
Them
back.
saying, yes, that was their intention for us to use our unspent money, why does that matter to you? On a philosophical level?
I guess what matters more is, that we submitted for the capital plan and that part of it was not approved.
But it wasn't that it was, they didn't say, we don't believe in this project, don't do it. They said, we think this would be more suitable for ARPA. So they sent it to the selectmen for ARPA consideration. But the selectmen had, I don't know, $1 million or so dollars of projects that they needed on their budget to be funded. Plus this project that's on our budget. They know, and I don't know if this is why they did it this way, but they know that we were going to have unexpended funds that were able to meet that project. Whereas they have this other $1 million of their own projects that they also need to fund. If I'm them, I might say, why don't we fund our project and have the Board of Education use their unexpended funds? That way everyone gets their project funded.
I hear you. You just don't need me.
No, but I still understand why.
I think having the conversation is valuable to understand.
Right.
And to the extent we can reach consensus on these, I think it's valuable.
Yeah.
Plus, we could be wrong.
I'm wrong a lot.
The reason why we posed all of these questions this way, some of these things we could have just purchased the Chromebooks, last month for next year, right? Some school districts do that. They look at where they are at the end of the year, they're in a good position, and they go ahead and they go on a spending spree in the months of May and June. And that's not a transparent way to operate, and that's not how we want to operate either. And so we want to be careful, the administration wants to be careful about large ticket expenditures in the last 2 months of the year, because we want to maintain a healthy, transparent relationship with you and the town. So that's why we're putting these things on your radar. And I do, we've only been here for 2 years, but I do get the general sense that, to your point, you look at end of year funds and you make a binary decision about whether you're supporting healthcare and what's going back to the town. So, these other ticket items, the Chromebooks, they're in the budget next year. It's not something we need to purchase this year. This is just an option. So this box doesn't have to be checked. These interactive whiteboard, again, not in the budget next year. The additional VERIC is in the budget next year. We don't have to check that box because we've already used the budget. We already made the decisions in January to prepay the VERIC as part of the budget discussion, but that's completely transparent. So, we're really looking at here, probably 150,000 for, an additional healthcare contribution, probably not the Chromebooks. The project, you're having this discussion because it is a project we discussed for the past 6 months. And just the other items, the playground equipment, we probably should have, we may not have even put that on there. We could have just taken care of that.
Right.
So I want, you mentioned this sort of binary concept of it's health insurance or it's back to town, and health
So
insurance.
that's what you've done in the past.
Right, exactly, and health insurance exists in part because of our sort of Frankenstein structure.
Right.
And our self-insurance plan, and the fact that it's managed through region, it's a whole convoluted thing about why that's even a binary choice. But I'm thinking back to some conversations we've had around capital planning and around moving from a break fix model to a modernization, or two streams, where one is modernization and development of future looking spaces or future design spaces, while also maintaining things like boilers and roofs. Where we've been in a just boilers and roofs mentality for a long time. Does it make sense to view this instead of a binary sense in a trilateral sense and say, what we're doing at the end of the year is health insurance, educational modernization, or whatever you want to call it, future planning, and return to town. And if you look at it through that lens, then you say, no, we're not gonna do the Vera, we're not gonna do the whiteboards, we're not gonna do the Chromebooks, because those are purely operational things. Basically, as if we had a 2% carryover fund for investment in educational spaces and modernization. Then you say at the end of the year, we have X number of dollars, here's the projects that we could fund out of the modernization bucket. Here's what we can do for health insurance where we think it needs to go, and here's what would be left over, and you can move those levers up and down.
Mike, what if I said to you, if we spend this money now, next year we'll have an excess of 1.6 million. And then we don't have to go to the town and say, hey, we need to replace the roof for $1.5 million, do a bond or whatever, and we actually end up saving the town money, because now we have the excess to actually do a big project like that next year.
I don't think that would work. I mean, something that large would have to be a capital request voted on, but I hear the spirit of
If we're
it.
spending the money now, then we have this excess where we don't have to go to like the town for this, a bigger request where we're asking the town to pay interest and all this other stuff, and we've been smart about how we spent the money and just been investing it well.
Take me back to the RES project and the JRMS project. Went on the capital plan. RES ended up, going to the referendum. JRMS, because the option existed.
Because we made Chris pick.
But to be clear, the project was a project for $475,000.
Both together.
It was presented as the educational space modernization project for $475,000. And the deliberation was, okay, what if you had to, could you do it in half? How would you do it in half? What is the breakout? What is this? And the breakout was it's 303 for one and 170 for the other. And
You're saying somebody asked you do it in half or like in phases, I mean?
like, could it be divided?
Yeah.
And obviously, you divide it between the two buildings. And I was asked which one mattered more, and I think I said, that's an unfair question. And,
Both of you, and you both said, I really can't pick one, and they made you pick one, and you had to.
and so, then they said, well, we'll send the 303 to the voters and we'll not send the 175. And then I think the first selectman was asked, is it ARPA eligible? And she said yes, and during the meeting, I sent the ARPA request.
And if ARPA wasn't I forget that question. Strike that.
I think the 303 is because it's also a safety, it was a safety thing for the kindergarten space, that was like we have to do it kind of thing.
Yeah, makes sense.
Perhaps we can vote.
So, well,
So there's,
I know. I know.
So as a practical matter, if we are talking about this in 3 weeks and we say, go cut the PO for the John Reed project on June 28th, we're probably not seeing the furniture until September.
I think
Or we
we
don't
could
know.
probably tee that up a little bit if you thought that it was, like, we could call and.
Right, and we had all basically ready to press go on the 27th.
We can,
we'll know the answer to that question, but
we'll know the answer.
Right.
the follow-up
But why not
meeting
put
with
the phone?
Roxanne. or something.
We should
Yeah.
give them the flexibility though of approving it now, so that if they do have an answer, like, we'll not waiting.
I think what I'm trying to avoid is coming back to this topic on the 27th, having gone part of the way, and then having a different philosophical question about doing it in phases and what's appropriate or not. And if we can get it in one shot, all the better for everybody. I think it's because it avoids sort of churning this philosophical question. But I guess we've churned it pretty much to death now anyway.
And
We're
we're
still gonna churn. Gonna churn it again.
Yeah, but I will be turning it for 3 weeks, but I will definitely come to the 27th ready with my philosophy. I did not know we were gonna be doing this.
Socrates over here. This guy.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so there's a,
Do you want me, should we take the motion off the table?
that's up to you. I was gonna say the motion right now is to go forward with the John Reed project out of unspent funds. What I'm hearing is that, at first, what I heard was that there's sort of a material difference between getting it done tonight and getting it done in 3 weeks. But now it sounds like it's a maybe material issue that we'll know more about soon.
But the construction part, so furniture is one thing, even though it's a small bit, we'll layer that in with the RES project, put in the information at the end of the week, might be useful for that.
If we think B&B can,
If they can do it, right, yeah. But you can even ask the question about us.
yeah, sure, we want.
Yeah. What was the motion we made? Was it just about RES? Or was it about the educational modernization project in general? Because then you can ask a question.
For JR.
Earlier tonight,
Construction.
earlier tonight it was RES.
We said RES not. for
Way
the
back
project.
when we authorized the RFPs, it was for both individually subject to financing.
Okay.
I mean, we can make the same motion with respect to John Reed as to BMP,
Right.
or ECIPC, but,
Because that's the thing that you don't want to do during the summer. If the furniture showed up September 15th and you took the old stuff out and new stuff went in, the furniture's here, but it's gonna be here for, how long was that furniture here?
Don't know the first thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll do that as well.
there any other motions? I mean, in theory, we could have a conversation with the whole thing, but I think it's helpful to have,
Yeah, we can-
Mike's numbers with respect to the courtyard, I think will be
yeah.
impactful. I think to that, you know, Mike, with respect to end of year funds, would you be comfortable contributing anything to the courtyard?
Yeah, yeah, don't put it past me, I could kill my own project. Let me.
Principles are about, right?
Exactly. Let me work on the numbers, you know, I'd like to do that project, I'd like to contribute to it financially, you know. But whether it gets voted on here or not, I think it's a separate issue.
Well, the question is, if this box were checked 3 weeks from now, and the number was, who knows what the number would be? Would you maintain the same philosophical concern?
It's similar, it's the same as the furniture project, the courtyard, the playground equipment, is all in that same category. The Bear and the Chromebooks, you know, a whole, you know, different thing, like we're pulling forward more into this year. It's not the same thing, yeah, yeah, sorry, I can't give you a.
No, I'm just trying to, you know, understand, because you can categorize all these things slightly differently. And
Yeah, I get, yeah, I see three categories on intake. Okay, now,
capital operating and health insurance, basically.
yeah. Or health, pulling forward from, you know, next year's budget and other slash capital. Yeah.
But it's like capital. Because I'm not even sure we would need to direct the administration to do anything for $5,000 in playground equipment. So I guess is that exists in several lines already.
Yeah, we could.
Never the twain should.
Yeah. That's such a small thing, and we've done those things before. The floor scrubber comes to mind.
We don't talk about
I love it. The tuba, right? That's one from 2014. Yeah, those are small things. No, that's not what we're talking about here.
So I think what I'd like to do then is be in a position on the 27th to not beat this horse until it's further dead. But everybody has now a view of what the sort of menu is, and Dr. McKinnon, if that changes over the next couple of weeks, you can certainly send a memo to the board that updates on some of the options are, so that we can have a decisive view of what that is. In the meantime, I will do what I can to figure out if there's any additional clarity on what the selectmen were, we're not thinking with respect to the John Green project, just to the extent it provides the appropriate time.
I appreciate all of that, by the way.
What would it take to actually get the town to let us have a capital expense like budget that carries over?
We have to do an MOU with the Board of Finance.
You wouldn't need an MOU with the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance would be required to authorize the existence of a 2% carryover fund, basically, which is by 2% is up to 2% of operating can be deposited in a year. And different towns have reached different working understandings or formal MOUs about those. You could do it and say it's restricted strictly to excess special ed costs or unexpected funds over there, only to fund health insurance, only to fund capital for any board discretion, whatever it is. And the last time we proposed that was during the pandemic. It was either 2020 or 2021. And we said, can we please have this? And they said, thank you for asking. And there was never really a decision.
So we can ask them again.
Yeah, and certainly. ask them.
I think that what I was getting at with Mike before about spending it now so we can save it later, like that would be what would, like, whatever money we can
That's
save.
blank permission to do this. Right. Is what that is.
And I would, my philosophy on these non-lapsing accounts is that when you allow for that money to be carried over, and when the board sets the goal basically of, we can use this money to enhance the campus or to enhance learning and or whatever it is we want to use it for, these sort of special projects. It incentivizes administrations to be cost conscious, because if they spend the budget to 98%, there's only going to be 2% to be rolled over, as opposed to let's go find paper to buy. But when the opposite is true, and this is a point that I made to the Board of Finance over the winter when we were talking about the boiler. If what you're doing is saying that I have to spend unspent funds to do this, you're incentivizing us to spend to zero so that you have to pick up the tab. And that is not in the best interest of taxpayers.
Right.
So, you know, I'm,
And that's not what we're doing here, just to be clear.
no,
No, just want to make that.
yeah. But I'm happy to run that up the flagpole again.
Yeah, and I think that what John was saying, that we're trying to incentivize that good behavior, not spend all the money on ice cream or whatever, but like, it just makes sense. I don't know why we wouldn't do it, because long term, it's gonna save the town money, capital expenses to come up. Incentivize everybody.
I mean, a good example was going back 3 years when we needed to replace the phone system in both buildings. It was about $60,000 roughly. It took 8 meetings and 9 months to get that approved. Whereas if we had a non-lapsing account, it could be used for things like this. If we needed a phone system, okay, we're gonna pay for the phone system out of the non-lapsing account, move on to the next thing. But it took half the town to talk about the phone system.
Leasing versus buying, and it was terrible.
In any event, the last time we did that, the board passed a motion authorizing me to go and request that. The non-lapsing account.
Okay.
I would make that one.
What motion is that?
That for you to go and talk to the board of finance, to allow us to have the current,
To request the establishment of a non-lapsing account.
there you go.
There's a second to Sherrod's motion. Laura, is there any discussion on Sherrod's motion? Call the question on Sherrod's motion, all in favor? Carries 6-0. All right, once more around the park on that, and so we have an increasingly sort of hefty agenda on the 27th. And I think we'll probably plan to lead with this item on unspent funds so that we can knock that out once and for all. In the meantime, we'll expect some updates from the administration because there's going to be a few moving pieces this week and next. And if we need to move any faster than that, you'll hear from the administration. call a quickie meeting at some point if necessary. Anything else, or Jason on your end?
Nope, that's it.
Yes.
That brings us on to board committee reports. Any board committee reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to superintendent evaluation, which is a proposed executive session. What I would look for is a motion to convene or to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing the superintendent's evaluation and invite Dr. McKinnon to attend.
Make the motion.
Mike with a second, Vice Chair Rod, all in favor? Motion carries 6-0. We are entering executive session at 9:20 p.m. The rest of the administration is certainly dismissed for the evening.
Yeah.